Something is happening in Los Angeles that cannot be treated like just another random June detail. Chris O'Leary's new defense is starting to show where it wants to squeeze, where it wants to attack, and who could become the most dangerous piece on the entire board. Derwin James right in the middle of that? Of course. But today is bigger than a star player getting praise. It is about the plan, the quiet cut, the hidden roster spot, and Justin Herbert being built behind the scenes to play faster. If you feel the Chargers getting more aggressive, hit that like button and stay with me. This is where a good defense separates itself from a defense that steps on the field and sends a message. Derwin James just went through 2 bounce-back all-pro level seasons with Jesse Minter, after that messy 2023 season where Brandon Staley kept moving his role, his responsibilities, his alignments, and it felt like the most complete player on the defense was being used as an answer for everything except as a planned nightmare for opposing offenses. Now, with Chris O'Leary taking over, the question is not whether Derwin is still elite. That debate is over. The question is how far this new coordinator is willing to push Derwin into the conflict, because O'Leary was careful. Of course he was. A coordinator in June is not opening the vault in a press conference. He talked about subtle differences. He said he sees Derwin being used in a similar way, close to the ball, at the point of attack, as a nickel, as a slot, covering, blitzing, to the field, to the boundary. But listen to the behind-the-scenes layer in that answer. When a coach says he wants to do all of that with one player, he is not describing a position. He is describing a problem the entire offense has to solve before the snap. Then comes the line that lights up the board. O'Leary joked that he would love to have 11 Derwin Jameses. That sounds like a press conference compliment, but there is competitive venom underneath it. He knows there is no other defender on this roster with that package. Derwin can lock down the perimeter, attack the backfield, match up with tight ends, live near the line, disguise pressure, drop into coverage, and turn a normal call into a trap. O'Leary himself pointed to blitzing and owning the perimeter as things Derwin is the best in the world at. Best in the world. That is not a small compliment. Now pair that with a number that should bother people. The Chargers were only 29th in blitz rate last season, at 18.9%. Minter's defense was dominant in a different way, more opportunistic, more patient, more built around forcing mistakes. It worked. Nobody needs to erase that. But O'Leary seems to be flirting with a more aggressive version, a more uncomfortable version, one that lives closer to the line of scrimmage. And if Derwin becomes the trigger for that shift, this defense gets a different personality. That is the part the AFC needs to respect. Derwin is not trying to prove he belongs at the top. He is trying to lead a defense that wants to play in February. A third straight All-Pro nod? That can enter the conversation. But the bigger target is different, making Los Angeles look less reactive and more predatory. If O'Leary really puts Derwin at the center of the pressure, blitzing, closing the edge, confusing protections, and getting to the quarterback, the Chargers are not simply changing coordinators. They might be changing which side feels the fear. And when the conversation moves away from Derwin, it does not leave the defense. It just changes volume. Because one thing is talking about the All-Pro everybody knows controls the field. Another thing is looking at the back of the room, where training camp usually creates the decisions nobody respects in June and everybody understands in August. Nadame Tucker is exactly that kind of name. The undrafted rookie out of Western Michigan comes in with a direct connection to Chris O'Leary, and that matters. Not because a roster spot is a friendship gift. Not at all. On a serious roster, you do not carry a player just because the coordinator knows him. But when the coordinator already knows how to use him, when he has seen that explosiveness up close, when the player was extremely productive inside his defensive calls, the conversation changes. Tucker finished 2025 as one of the most productive pass rushers in the country, second in sacks behind only David Bailey, who went second overall. That is ridiculous for a player who later did not hear his name called in the draft. Then comes the cold part of the evaluation. He only played meaningful snaps for a short stretch, came to football later, went through the junior college route, will be an older rookie turning 26, does not have ideal arm length, and is smaller for the position. The NFL looks at that package and starts hunting for flaws before it hunts for impact. But the Chargers are not building a museum of perfect measurements. They need people who can win reps. And Tucker has something that changes a rotation. Burst. Get off. That first step that forces a tackle to open his hips early, changes the angle of the protection, and creates pressure even when the sack does not arrive. In a group with Khalil Mack, Bud Dupree, Kyle Kennard, and other names fighting for space, a different kind of pass rusher can become a good problem for the staff. There is one detail you cannot ignore. Khalil Mack brought up Tucker on his own when speaking with the media during OTAs. A veteran like that does not throw out praise for nothing. He sees practice, sees habits, sees who shows up hungry. So yes, Tucker still has to prove it in pads. He has to survive the physical part of camp. He has to deliver on special teams, because a roster bubble edge rusher does not get luxury treatment. But if he keeps that explosiveness when the contact gets real, the pressure rises on more established names. That is where the story gets aggressive. Los Angeles could have a surprise veteran cut if the youth kicks the door open. Bud Dupree has a resume. Kennard has fourth-round investment, but a roster is not a scrapbook. If Tucker is the guy O'Leary knows, trusts, and can plug in as a changeup in the pass rush, the Chargers may get pushed into an uncomfortable decision. And honestly, that is how good rosters are born. Somebody who is not invited to the party comes in kicking down the door and forces the team to choose production over name value. If Tucker is the explosive threat on defense, Johnny Pascuzzi is a different kind of battle, the quiet one, the kind that does not become a national headline, but decides who actually survives when the roster drops from 90 to 53. And this is something sharp Chargers fans should track, because Harbaugh and this staff are not just looking for pretty names, they are looking for function. Pascuzzi does not have a path that screams favorite. He came from Rockhurst in Kansas City, played both football and baseball, walked on at Iowa, redshirted in 2021, and barely got real opportunities in the years after that. Just 2 catches for 41 yards across 3 seasons with the Hawkeyes. Then, in 2025, he transferred to Tulane looking for snaps, looking for the ball, looking for any chance to show there was more there than a hidden resume. And the production was modest. 14 games, 12 catches, 158 yards, and 1 touchdown. Nobody is going to pretend that scares a defensive coordinator, but his evaluation does not live only in the box score. The scouting report points to size, athleticism, receiving ability, and blocking fundamentals from Iowa's tight end pipeline. For the Chargers, that is the interesting piece. Because the tight end room looks like the top 3 spots are pretty much taken with Oronde Gadsden II, Charlie Kolar, and David Njoku. So Pascuzzi is not fighting to be a luxury piece. He is fighting to convince the team to keep 4 tight ends, or to beat out Jaran Bradley and Evans Fuboda for a depth spot or a practice squad role. It is a narrow fight. Physical, no glamour. His chance runs through 2 things: blocking like somebody who understands the dirty part of the offense, and showing that 4.69 in the 40 is more than a pretty evaluation number. If he can run, seal the edge, help on special teams, and be reliable through August practices, his story changes from tryout guy who signed a contract to useful piece the staff does not want to lose. And for a franchise trying to give Justin Herbert a more complete offense, even the 4th tight end needs a purpose. Pascuzzi is still far from a locked-in roster spot, but this is exactly the kind of name that comes alive when the pads go on and the conversation turns into contact. After talking about roster depth, the story comes back to where everything carries the most weight in Los Angeles: Justin Herbert. But this time, it is not that lazy, the quarterback has to carry the team conversation. No, this news is sharper than that. More behind the scenes, almost like something out of the meeting room. Mike McDaniel is working on the foundation of the offense through the cruelest detail in modern football: time. During minicamp, McDaniel made it clear he is not trying to tear Herbert down and rebuild him. Good, because nobody with sense takes an arm like that and tries to turn him into somebody else. The work is about shaving margins, adjusting the stance, removing the false step, getting the body to the right spot before the defense can breathe. He said that when you give a player the reason behind a change, you can get buy-in, and Herbert bought in. That is the part that should scare the AFC. The shotgun change, with the left foot forward and the right foot aligned with his throwing hand, sounds like a detail to anyone who only watches the ball leave his hand. But for a timing offense, it can be the difference between getting the ball out in 2.4 seconds and holding it closer to 3 seconds, where pressure becomes a hit, a sack, a dead drive, and a fan base holding its breath. McDaniel wants to cut out that micro delay. He wants Herbert receiving, planting, and firing before the pass rush can finish its sentence. And Herbert answered the right way. He said he has thrown a lot of footballs, that May and June are months to work smart, to take it easy, to think about the movement now so he does not have to think about it during the game. That is maturity. That is not a lack of intensity. That is construction. That is understanding the season is not won with a tired arm in OTAs, but with automatic detail when the stadium is screaming and the protection starts to bend. Now connect that with McDaniel's track record. In Miami, he helped Tua Tagovailoa live in fast rhythm, with the ball coming out on time and the defense getting no chance to reorganize. In Atlanta, he was part of that environment where Matt Ryan reached MVP level in 2016. So when he looks at Herbert and talks about margins, people need to hear it, because Herbert already has the size, the arm, the toughness, and the rare talent. If he gets a system that steals half a second from the defense, the conversation shifts from how much can he save to who can keep up. And I want to see the answer from the skeptics in the comments. If McDaniel really speeds up Herbert's clock, how many AFC defenses can survive that rhythm? Because to me, this is the most dangerous news of the day. Derwin can change the tone of the defense. Tucker and Pascuzzi can shake up roster spots. But Herbert with clean footwork, faster reads, and the ball coming out before the pressure arrives, that is not a small tweak. That is the kind of behind-the-scenes work that turns into an explosion on Sunday. The read is simple when you pull it all together. The Chargers are leaving clues of a team that is less patient and more cutting. O'Leary wants Derwin James as a living weapon, not a boxed-in piece. Tucker and Pascuzzi remind everyone that training camp rewards function, explosiveness, and toughness, not a pretty resume. And Herbert, with McDaniel working on the timing details, could gain the kind of edge that decides big games before the pressure gets there. Los Angeles does not need to sell promises right now. It needs to turn these signals into real impact when the season starts. If you want to follow every move in this build, subscribe to the channel, because the Chargers' next step could tell us a lot about how big this jump really is.